why are you against it, given everything that he said about the way it will boost business?
Well, I think, first of all, there's the economic costs, as you identified. We're looking at 700 wildlife sites, 100 ancient woodlands. We're a hugely nature-depleted country. We simply can't afford to lose any more. And the fact is, if we were absolutely slashing carbon emissions when we need to get to zero carbon very quickly, that might be part of an argument. But actually, this is at best carbon neutral. This is not a way of cutting our carbon emissions. It doesn't get us to where we need to get to. The second thing I'd say that I think is really important to focus on is this is very much a project for London. There's a lot of talk of the north, but if you actually look at HS2's own figures, 40% of the economic benefit goes to London. Yet if you look at our national economy, the gross value added in London is about 23%. So this is once again London sucking down more resources, more money into London, not into the deprived communities that really need it. And thirdly, there's the opportunity cost. If you're doing this, spending this, and taking all of those contractor resources, all of the people working on this, they're not working on alternative things. The government's not spending on things like we had a bit of a bus announcement today, a bit of a cycling announcement. But if you really focused on that local transport, the cross east-west lines across the country, then you could actually have far better, stronger environmental and business benefits, particularly in those communities that the government says it wants to level up.
But what about the optics of it? You're constantly telling people to stop, travelling by plane, or you want them out of cars. And get onto trains and get onto buses. You say it was carbon neutral at best, but surely in the long term, this is of benefit to the environment.
Well, in terms of modal shift, which is the terminology for this, it is talking about potentially a 5% modal shift from cars and from flying. That's a tiny shift. You've also got the risk that if you're looking at the current plans for parkway stations, actually more people drive to those parkway stations. And the idea that, well, if it's much faster, then people will choose that over flying. Well, the fact is actually, very often it's door-to-door timings that matter. And because of the design, the structure of this, it's actually not necessarily going to improve people's journeys. And, of course, cost is a big factor, and we don't really have any figures on that, but we know that rail travel at the moment is hugely costly. And, we've got to look at a different kind of structure, one that serves people's needs, not that races through the countryside, destroying everything in its path.
Yeah, I mean, much of the argument is Boris Johnson saying, making a lot about confidence to build a better future, to have pride in these sort of projects, and many other countries have high-speed rail. We're just lagging behind when it comes to projects like this.
Well, of course, we very much want to see investment, a huge amount of investment in transport, in rail. But, let's make sure that every community in the land is well served, that people can afford to leave their car at home, afford to not have a car at all because they've got affordable, convenient, reliable public transport that gets them where and when they need to get to. I mean, a year or so back, I was in Finland and I caught a bus into the middle of a national park, and that was a half-hourly service all day. Now, I think of North Yorkshire, some of our wonderful national parks up there. If there's a bus a day, you're doing rather well. And if you go for a walk and you miss the last bus, you're in very big trouble.
I mean, we've got beautiful landscape all over this country. We're very fortunate, and wildlife sites. But how do you do a project like this without disturbing some of that? And I go back to this argument that we're constantly being told travel by train, freight by train is good. How do you do a project like this without disrupting some kind of environmental or having some kind of environmental impact?
Well, what you do is you design it for the purpose it's actually stated purpose. Now, we started off with HS2, with the clues in the name. They were talking about we've got to go really fast, so we have to go in a terribly straight line. That means ploughing through things. The argument has shifted, and it's now all an argument, well, this is about increasing capacity. Well, if you increase the capacity, you don't need to go so fast. In that case, you can bend around that ancient site. You can make a difference in terms of what your impact is. Bend around that community that at the moment you're slicing through and really cutting through and destroying people's lives. It's possible to put in lots of great public transport without, reducing the impact, not the kind of level of impact that HS2 has.
And just finally, were you disappointed by the way criticism within the Commons from other Tory MPs seems to have evaporated slightly? I mean, there was muted criticism. Are you disappointed with the way That's gone. And have you given up now? Have you, do you accept graciously this defeat?
We're the Green Party. We don't give up. We'll keep fighting the good fight. We are in a climate emergency. This is a crisis situation. We need investment in affordable, reliable, convenient public transport for everyone all across the country, but particularly in our poorest areas. And HS2 just does not deliver that.